There we go.
All right, here we go. Good evening, everybody. I'm Will Jawando, council member at large here in Montgomery County. Thanks for coming to this community conversation. As I mentioned, this is I'm the lead for libraries for the county, which basically is, we don't have subcommittees, but if we did, that's what that would mean. Anytime we deal with budgetary issues or policy related to libraries, I'm the one that takes the lead on the council. We all care about the libraries on the council, but I really care about the libraries, as our friends in the libraries in the orange shirts know, who are here, and others. As part of that, there were 21 public libraries, and then we have one in the Parksburg Jail. Back in 2019, when I started to visit all of the libraries, to look at them, talk to the staff, but also use it as an opportunity to have a community conversation, because they are located all across the county, and as an at-large member, I have the honor of representing all of our residents. And so this is, I don't know which number this is, but I'm getting close to having been to all of them. I think I have 3 left, so this would be number 18 or something like that. So, and you're my first guinea pigs that we're doing virtual and in person. So give yourself a round of applause for that. Congratulations. And I want to introduce a couple people before we get started. And we have my good friend, your senator, if you live in Rockville, Cheryl Kagan is here. Do you want to say something to everybody, Cheryl? And have her say hello, and then I'll introduce the rest of our guests. Good to see you.
So thank you all for coming out. I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Rockville and Gaithersburg, and a literally lifelong Montgomery County Library user and fan. Having Will Jawando as our leader has been enormously valuable. I think you probably all know that throughout the crazy COVID challenges, Councilmember Jawando was reading aloud children's stories, which was able to, which offered the opportunity to give parents a little bit of a break and offer an alternative to the child care or the parental oversight or babysitter, and or TV, yes, or video games and all that. He's a loving father and spouse and dedicated community leader, and I'm glad to be allied with him on so many issues. I think you all know that 3 people have died in my district when 911 has failed, and for the last 7 years I've worked on upgrading our 911 systems. Public safety is a big priority for Councilmember Jawando and the rest of the council. And Maryland, as a result of the commission that I chair, has passed 11 new laws and is really at the forefront nationally. We're continuing our work in partnership with the counties, and that and election law and supporting our nonprofits and so much more. But thank you for being great supporters of libraries and for listening and learning from Councilmember Will Jawando. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Senator Kagan. You guys have a great team here in Rockville, which is big parts of it. I also want to recognize Ari Brooks, who is the executive director of the Friends of the Library. So good to see you. Is that right? Executive director, is that the right title? Okay, I'm getting it. It only took me 18 times to get it right. And then we have James Donaldson, who is the assistant director of the library system, and he's in the back there. So he will come out of his hiding spot behind the bar there if there's any detailed library questions that he's better suited to answer. Obviously, this is not just about libraries. You can ask me about anything. I know from the signs I see that there will be other questions that aren't library related, which is totally fine. And I just ask that we just have a couple ground rules, that you're respectful, that you take under a minute to ask your question or make your comment, and then good thing is we normally do multiple rounds. So if you have another one, we'll come back to you, and I'll do the best to answer. And if not, we'll get you an answer and follow up with you if it's something I can't answer right now. I also want to introduce 2 of my staff members, Seamus McNamara in the back and LaTroy Mays, who helped you when you came in. And LaTroy just had a birthday on Tuesday, so let's just wish her a happy birthday. So, and who am I missing? We have other library staff here. Remind me your name, Patrick, and you are the branch manager here at Rockville, Patrick. And then we have another Rockville branch. What's your name again? Priya. And what do you do here again? assistant supervisors. So we are good to go with libraries. And I see we have Fred Evans here, our former school board member, right? You know, I know, just kidding. I just adjunct, former principal, longtime principal in Gaithersburg High School. And so glad to see you, Fred. There we go. There we go. All right, awesome. So now we've done all the introductions, I think. So I'll just give you a couple seconds on what's going on, maybe a couple minutes, and then we can jump right into your questions. You can follow up with me. So we still are the county in the country that has the highest vaccination rate of counties over 300,000 people. That's a good thing for Montgomery County. So we have over 80% have received their first shot over 12. Obviously, it's still a couple 100,000 people that have not received their vaccination, right? So we're still pushing that. We are seeing a slight uptick, but it's not as what we're seeing in other places like on the West Coast, and we're watching it and monitoring it very closely. I see a lot of people have their face coverings on, which is good. I'm fully vaccinated. I usually, if I'm in a place where a lot of people and it's not, and I'm tight, I will wear my mask, my face covering as well. And so that we're obviously, if you're not vaccinated, we want people to get vaccinated. If you're, and certainly want you to wear your face covering if you're not. We are hopeful that as kids go back to school, you know, you're seeing a lot in the news today. The discussion about the CDC is going to come out with guidance that masks should be worn in schools. I think we are very likely, though not our decision, but I think the school board and our health director is very likely to say that that was the policy we will follow, which has been followed in MCPS up until this point. And even as summer school, my kids are in summer school, it's happening right now. That's the policy, so that won't change. We have some things going on with our businesses. So they have begun to reopen. We know they've been hit very hard. We've given out a lot of assistance to businesses. We're looking at another round with the remaining federal money from the ARPA funds that the President Biden and Vice President Harris have given out to Congress. We look to do that in the fall. We allocated over $50 million to help our businesses. We've also allocated just about $60 million in rental assistance, which is still available. We know a lot of people need that. So you can visit our DHHS website or dial 311 if you know anyone who needs rental assistance. That application is still open. Anywhere between our average award is around $10,000 to $12,000. And so they're significant and can help people. We're really worried. Just had a briefing last week about a potential eviction crisis as the courts continue to process people who are behind on their rent. What else did I want to mention to you? Storytime was mentioned just last Saturday. We had our 100th Storytime right out here. And I know some of you were at it and it was really fun. Yeah, thank you very much. That was good. And for our 100th, I decided to take a break for a month or so for Storytime. So, but I said I would do it until the libraries reopen for in-person services. And as you know, that finally happened for all of our libraries just a couple of weeks ago. And so it was good timing. I often like to mention, though, our great library staff have been working hard the whole time. As you all know, 350,000 holds to go-ish, thousands of virtual programming. And so I'm just really excited to be a part of that mix. What else? Oh, just today, I'll just announce this because this happened today. We had Secretary Jennifer Granholm here in Silver Spring, and I was able to be with her to help her announce this solar app that Montgomery County is part of that will take our processing time for you to, if you want to get rooftop solar in your home, it used to take multiple weeks. We got it down to about 8 or 9 days. With this app, it'll take hours to get approval. And so we're utilizing it here in the county, and we're doing a pilot now, but we're going to use it countywide. And so we got lucky, and they wanted to announce it at a home in Silver Spring. So if you don't have rooftop solar, it just got easier to get. And if you're interested in that, you can check out Solar App Plus. We did that today. Oh yeah, well, if you're around trees, they can evaluate it. I'll pause there because there's a lot of things I could talk about. No, I will mention one other thing. We're preparing for re-entering school. I've been very active in what do our students need to get back in school, the social, emotional, educational supports, everything that they're going to need after school and the like. And Councilmember Rice, who's chair of the Education Committee, and there's been a debate over the last year about the role of police in our society in general, obviously in schools, but he and I got together. We were on opposite sides of this issue. We now agree that police shouldn't be in schools in an enforcement capacity. In a programmatic capacity is absolutely fine. Sports, teaching class, having some sort of seminar program about drunk driving, et cetera. But we don't want that enforcement capacity. But what we agree on is a ton of things that students do, particularly coming in school after COVID. Mental health support, social emotional counselors, nurses. So we as a council just got recommendations back from this what was named by the students the SWAG group, which I thought was pretty cool, the Student Wellness Action Group, and they are going to be releasing a report on their recommendations. And the council, all of my colleagues, I think I can speak for all of them, and the county executive, plan to make robust investments so that kids coming back to school have not only a new approach to policing in schools, but the more investment in the supports they're going to need coming out of it. So that's some things to look on the horizon. I'll pause there because I could talk about a lot of different things, but that's kind of a flavor of what's going on in the county. We are in our last week of session next Tuesday, and then there's a short break from session. We'll still be working. Don't think we won't be working, trust me. But there's no session in August. We come back in the second week of September. So that's what's going on as far as procedure with the council. All right, so I'll pause there. If you have a question, raise your hand, and if you could just tell me who you are, I know who you are, where you live, and ask your question, and I'll respond. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So for the people online, the question is, how do we transition and not have police involved with folks in the library that are experiencing homelessness, for example, or in the schools? I agree. I think this is like the major challenge of our time is changing, and you've heard this word a lot, but it's true, reimagining what public safety means. And unfortunately, we have underinvested for a long time as a society in mental health and social supports and public health, right? COVID showed us how prior to, I wasn't in this category, but if you would have asked who was our public health director to most elected officials in Montgomery County 2 years ago, they would not have been able to answer the question. And it's related to the fact that we have underinvested in those types of supports, which we know, data knows, data shows us rather, that if we invest in these types of supports, you will have less need for interaction with law enforcement. And so we're at this moment now, what do we do about it? Is it the police's fault that they're called in every instance and they dial 911 for every problem? No, that's not their fault. Now that doesn't mean they're off the hook for the responsibility of how they interact with people when they show up. We need to make sure that's right too. But we also need to divert some of those calls, right? And that's why we're at the beginning stages of implementing what's called a crisis now model, where at the point, to Senator Kagan's point, of 911, if a call does come into emergency, as soon as that, we need to have trained, well-rested, highly paid, folks answering the phone, but they need to also be trained to divert to a system of crisis intervention counselors, social workers. We just made critical investments to expand from 1 to 6. The crisis intervention team we have in the county. In a county of 1 million, we had 1 just a few months ago. And so, but that's still not enough, right? But we're taking steps, and we're going to need. But the system is so used to the old way of police respond to everything that's what is still happening. We had a young man killed in Gaithersburg last weekend who was clearly dealing with the mental health issue or a substance abuse issue or both, and was shot and killed. Was shot 24 shots in the car, and we're still getting the details. I'm going to see the video next week. I think it's going to be released next week after we view it in closed session. And, you know, we had another young man, Fanan Burhate, was dealing with a mental health issue, a 30-year-old Ethiopian-American Uber driver, never been in trouble, shouldn't matter if you've been in trouble or not. But in front of his home in White Oak, had a knife, was clearly frustrated, and was shot within less than a minute of interacting with a lone officer who jumped out yelling at him with his gun pointed. Now, do I know if like a social worker got out and said, "Hey, what's going on? Did you have that day? How can I help?" Would that have changed how I don't know, but we have to try. And there's people trained to do it. And one of the models we're looking at is we're getting trained by Cahoots, which is in Eugene, Oregon. And they have about a third of their 911 calls are diverted at the point of call away from police, a third, because of social, emotional, or substance abuse or mental health. And we need to get there. We're far away from that, but we're trying to set the infrastructure in place so we can get there. Another thing I'll say, they haven't lost a person, someone who is unarmed, in 40 years doing this program. Haven't lost anybody. So it can be done. I think we just have to figure it out. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're taking steps. Police will not be in schools patrolling halls in an enforcement capacity next year. That was not the case a year ago. So we took steps forward. And I know that's controversial to some, but I think it's the right step. It's a signal that we are moving to this support model. And we need to do it in mental health, in homelessness, in the library, in schools, go down the list. So I'm trying to get us there. We're trying to get in that direction, but it's a hard thing to do because the system's been set up that way for so long. Well, right. Well, change is hard. I'll say that, but I think we're trying to head in the direction that you're talking. All right, let me go to other people because I answered way too long. I'm going to shorten my answer. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Peter. We wanted to speak about 1907 before this passed, and you and some of the other council members have given us a reason that you believe that if we don't enact this, we will be sued by the and I just want to take issue with that. There are thousands of jurisdictions that have not adopted such permissive standards for the telecom. These jurisdictions are not being sued now. Just as Montgomery County, I strongly believe would not be sued if the ZTA failed. And the reason they're not being sued, and the reason that Montgomery County is because the telecoms know perfectly well that they can't win a lawsuit under an effective prohibition standard under Section 332 of the 1990s Telecom Act, unless there is literally an absence of coverage in the proposed location. That's the standard that the court circuit has used for many years, continues to be used. Case, the SOCO in 2015. So wireless is abundant in Montgomery County. If you look at the coverage maps, all of the major telecom companies, they show Montgomery County literally growing with wireless service. So there is no, except perhaps in a few unusual locations, there literally is no absence of service. And furthermore, second standard requirement is that there be an absence of a reasonable alternative location for the proposed cell tower for antenna. And as the council itself has noted, there are literally thousands of unused poles throughout the county that make perfectly good alternative sites. So it seems to me, under the standards that the Fourth Circuit always used to evaluate these claims, there literally is no effective prohibition, and there cannot be an effective prohibition, except perhaps in a few really unusual locations.
You get into the question.
Telecom,
Yeah, just, I know. Sorry.
so I would like you to explain to us, if you have looked seriously at section 332, paragraph 7, and section 253 of the Telecom Act, if you have really read carefully the city important, and if that's so, how have you managed to come to the conclusion that we risk extremely damaging lawsuits when that seems impossible under the existing standard? And even if we were to be sued, the only risk that we face is that we would be required to allow the proposed antenna.
Sure.
So it seems like it's very, very difficult case to understand.
No, I appreciate it. That's actually not my stated reason. If I do vote for it on Tuesday, it's not a one related to the fact that we would be sued. For me, I've been weighing a lot of different factors, right? I don't like, if you remember when we considered it last time, I was one of the people that slowed it down to say, let's see what's happening with the court cases that we were party to, right? And it didn't make sense for us, in my view, to move forward until those were disposed of. I know there's still a few that are hanging on, but they're not the main core ones have kind of been litigated and dealt with. I think it's a balancing act of what is surrounding, the competitiveness argument of we're going to have 5G at some point. Other surrounding jurisdictions do. How does that, that's the other kind of core argument, right? Again, that is made. There's the obviously being in compliance with the FCC order to not materially inhibit. You talked about that. Our lawyers have the take that we could be sued. I understand, I'm a lawyer. I'm the only lawyer on the council. I understand arguments can be made that, and you cite some case law there from the Fourth Circuit, which I have seen. So I think that I don't like that they haven't updated the research, right? On the health effects, and that we're not even allowed to talk about that. I think that's ridiculous, right? That and make a decision based on that. I mean, I just spent a year and a half sitting as the Board of Health, making decisions about mask wearing and other things on probably a lot flimsier research and data. So I just think we should be able to do it on the basis of whatever we feel we should as elected representatives. But that's what it says. That's what you're not allowed to consider that. So, I have a lot of issues with it. But I think on balance, I think it will pass. There's a majority, regardless of the vote I take, it's going to pass. I think there's one person that probably vote against it, just to tell you the brass tacks of it at this point. I think, look, you're right. 4G is everywhere. It doesn't go away. All the previous cell phones, it's here. It's here. We all have one in our pocket probably right now or on our person, maybe some don't. But, and I think they should update the research, but I'm not doing it out of a fear of being sued. If I vote for it, I'm doing it because of the regional competitiveness and some of the benefits that connectivity could bring economically into certain communities. That's why I'd be doing it. Understanding I'm not completely happy with the way the position we're in. So, very briefly, yes.
I as you pointed out, we have a limited for the. We also have very widespread.
Yeah, Rockville has 5G because they have their own authority. They've already moved forward. Where we are right now is already moved forward with 5G, as you know. Some of the municipalities that have authority already that aren't subject to our zoning authority, like the city of Rockville, have already approved 5G. Just I'm sure you know that, but just for other in Gaithersburg.
So given that, since we already have I wonder what difference is it going to make to have these still close to residents' homes? And secondly, since you mentioned some of the other limitations, you want to wait for this other limitation. There is a very important thing that is still in the courts that we expect an opinion sometime very soon, probably in the month of August, and that's the DH trust versus FCC case that is going to address exactly this health issue, the fact that the FCC has not examined these standards since 1996, does not really look at the health effects, and is relying on 24 years data. And I wonder then why not wait for that case to resolve?
No, I understand what you're saying, and what I can say to you is that if there is data that comes out, I'm open to revisiting this, but I think it's going to take a while for the deployment to happen. Either way, even if we approve it, it's not going to happen overnight. And you look at other cities, that's been the case. So I think whatever if they update the research, they're forced to by the court, and that happens, something changes, I'd be willing to reconsider. All right, I know there's probably a lot of people that want to ask this question. All right, yes, sir. Yes, you are. You all are in my district.
First of all, I want to say I really don't like and I just want to say thanks for work. It is great using this. It's a great work. And the reason I wanted to speak tonight is really to say kudos to you again on your bill having rental increases. And, Corbyn's campaign, in addition to board and other organizations, really working on this issue very excited. And, so I want to say thank you for that. That's absolutely key. That daughter was trying to get out of the house. She was out of the house. So the second thing is that while that's good, I think I'm right about that the bill is not representation. And so that really is something that needs to be addressed. One piece about getting money to people and make sure that the rent stuff people out and extending that. The other piece is that there really does need to be educated. It's not allowing massive amount of people. We've already had people that has built around me, and it's just shocking. Right? The third thing, though, I agree. The third thing is that my understanding is we should just come in along. My understanding is that we have a lot of money from the rental relief, federal rental relief, sitting at $59 million. I think
that's how much we have. It's not all sitting.
Well, but it's not spent.
Not all of it is spent.
It's not spent.
Correct.
And so that really needs to be dealt with, right? And I've heard, anecdotal stories about how cumbersome the application is, how cumbersome it is to spend money. I'm not really worried about some poor person who takes a little more than they okay. Right? This is a crisis. So there's the three things which I think you're looking at. Is the stopping rent increases, which well. We have to really be clear that there should not be any evictions that are due to people who just pay a bill in some great home. And then third, we have to spend that. We have to make sure we figure out how to spend it quickly. That actually helps landlords. I'm not a crazy fan, but they need money, and that money flows through. And if it's sitting there, is we're gonna be in trouble.
I appreciate it. David?
David Monk.
David.
So that's my 2 cents.
It was more than 2 cents. I think it was $1. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you for you and all the people who are with the Poor People's Campaign. It's a righteous cause, and one that we need to remember now more than ever. And so I'll address this briefly, and then maybe the senator wants to say something on eviction, because that's really a state issue, unfortunately. I tried to see, I worked really hard when I introduced the first stabilization a year ago, which we passed and now that Governor Hogan has signaled he's ending the state of emergency, even though he kind of secretly did it one more month. It ends in August 12th, 15th right now, which kicks in the end of our period where you're protected from rent increases. But at that time, I tried to see if there was a way we could use our authority as a county to stop evictions. My lawyers told me that we couldn't. There was one of my colleagues in Philadelphia did use some legal theory to put a bill forward, and it's being challenged. And so their charter was different. So anyway, I looked at it, can't do it. It's a state issue. On the bill to extend, which I put in a bill to extend the rent increase cap, which still allows landlords to increase rents, but it's just the voluntary rent guidelines, which are tied to CPI, Consumer Price Index. Last year was 2.6. This year it's 1.4, which is in the range of what most landlords that are responsible landlords do anyway in any given year. They'll still be able to do that once a year. That I would extend for a year. We know if you look at the Great Recession, we're still recovering from the Great Recession. Many communities are. And this is going to have a huge tail on it as far as people coming out of this. You got the extended unemployment ending in September. Hopefully we can get the child tax credit for multiple years, but a lot of this aid will start to go away, and you're going to see this for many years. And so we need to provide as much assistance as we can. I don't know if I have the votes to extend for a year, right? We got 9 votes for the first one because we were in a pandemic and people understood. So if you care about that, please let my colleagues know, and because that's something that I think we really need to do. The bill would also not allow the accrual of late fees, which is really important because we want people to dig out. You don't want these late fees to stack up for 18, 19 months. If you can't pay the rent, you can't pay the late fee. And so that's, unfortunately, we did not do that in the first bill. I tried, the amendment failed, and this one is trying to correct that. So that would be really helpful if you can advocate. The city of Baltimore just this week passed just cause eviction. I'm channeling my colleague, Delegate Janelle Wilkins, who's been pushing that from down in Silver Spring. And that would not allow you to be evicted unless there was a real reason. You're breaking the windows, you're doing something like that. Because a lot of times, and this is a real danger in this environment too, people are going to, if you can get forced out for other reasons in other ways, just not offered an extended lease, go down the list. So Baltimore City just passed that. We need that as a tool as well. Again, a state issue. And the third thing you brought up was what? The 59 million. So we just got a briefing last week on this from our Department of Housing and Health and Human Services. The federal guidelines are a problem. They do slow down the ability this is a nationwide issue of being able to get the money out. Every jurisdiction, there's a local story about this. That being said, we are there. We've gotten just under 8,000 applications. 2,000 of those people are facing eviction right now, already have a case filed. They're prioritizing those. And in most cases are getting, those people the money quickly. So they do have a method to their madness. They have sped it up since we started complaining about it, to tell you the truth. And I can't remember what the exact amount is that they've given out, but I think it's somewhere around 14, 15 million, somewhere around there. But we need to move faster. We're trying to move faster. We're trying to say they've hired 40 extra processors to help process people and to move it along. But there are some issues with federal guidelines, but we're going to stay on that. We're going to get it out. I also had introduced, to your point of landlords, and passed a small business rent assistance bill, $1 million for that, because this was for businesses that make less than $500,000. These retail businesses. Think of your you know, a flower shop or your barber shop or your hairdresser or, you know, nail salon, you know, things that needed the front business. So that money went out the door really quick. We may do another round of that. 40% of Black businesses gone. 30 some odd percent of Black businesses. That's a nationwide number, but we're studying right now trying to get a sense of what our numbers are. But we tend to be right in the nationwide numbers on stuff like that because of our size and our diversity. And so how we build back equitably is tied a lot to the strength of these businesses, right? You know, the majority of our businesses are small businesses in this county. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. It's something I really, really worry about. And then we got to work on affordability in general, right? So your daughter can move out, you can get that room back, you know? And that I had, one thing I'll mention on that front is I had introduced a couple proposals called More Housing for More People. The first was a zoning change to allow duplexes, triplexes, quads in residential zones. Also controversial, but something we need to do. And especially near transit. This was within a mile of transit that you allowed this type of housing, which is good for the environment. It's good for people to get to work. That ZTA will come up this fall. I think we got a good shot at getting it passed, but that's going to need advocacy. And the other was an anti-rent gouging bill for outside of COVID, right? And also near transit, where we know rents are the highest. Again, you can raise rent up to the voluntary guidelines, but you shouldn't be able to raise rent 10%. You know, if your rent goes from 1,000 to 1,100 1 year, that's considered constructive eviction by our Department of Housing, and because it is. And so we need to have those types of protections for renters with limited exceptions if there's new construction or if there's a major renovation, that kind of thing. So those are two bills that we're working on. You know, I'm also working some things on our moderately priced dwelling units. We need to raise the amount of that in the deeper levels of affordability. I'm looking at legislation around that. So trying to tackle it from multiple angles. That is a existential threat for us here, the affordability housing. You have so many people in Aspen Hill. I live in Colesville. I know I can think of 3 or 4 homes in my neighborhood where I know there's 20 people living in at a minimum because you can't afford to live here. And it's not, and these are working people who go to work every day, you know, but so many of our residents are spending 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of their income on housing, and it's just not sustainable. So. Yeah, we'll send you, if you connect with Seamus, we can send you it's actually on the county website because they did the presentation. But we'll get you the data of it so you can download it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I mean, but you know, nothing to hold down.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
We got to raise wages too. We'll talk about that. Yes, red shirt, then we'll go here. Yep, 1 to 2. Yes, sir.
Yes. That's what I mentioned. One back to the rental eviction. Was Attorney General Brian Frost and others helped to develop a campaign in conjunction with legal services by legal.
Yes. Council.
People who are in the midst of the eviction at the courthouse. So just a bit, people be aware of that.
And we put some money into that too, as well. And our DHHS people are at the courthouse now on the days that they're processing evictions to help people with the assistance right there. But you're right, it's a big issue.
And then the other thing, just for that, I know process. Again, the focus is supposed to be COVID-19 related.
It does.
Not necessarily some of the other reasons that can come up in the case. You have to.
Yes. For that pot of money, we do have another pot, like for the normal just eviction prevention money. There is some money in that. If, you know, because some people are behind before COVID, right? And so that's going to be a different case. And we're going to, most of those folks it's going to be hard. We're going to have to try to probably rehouse them, right? But yes, there is another pot if it's non-COVID related. Yes, correct, correct. Absolutely.
I know the parents here, I'm very well here of people, but I actually think that I was surprised that we haven't done a higher number of people asking for assistance earlier in the process. And you know, sometimes when you go through evictions and situations like that, they're very personal things. People don't always want to put the pressure out there. They need real help and support. We in this county have some good great resources right now that can be made available to them. So absolutely, we can find ways to reach out. I don't know. We do care, and that we do have such resources.
No, that's absolutely right. And actually, studies show that people, they use all their savings, they do go into credit card debt, they ask family and friends. Like normally, they come for assistance after all those things. Unfortunately, trying to flip that. Okay, Cheryl, did you want to say anything about the evictions? If not, you don't have to. State stuff. You want to say something? Briefly, sure. Yeah.
So I think probably the specific folks would know that the Senate council only in session for 90 days from January to May. So we were unable to do anything now. There were a lot of Democrats, friendly parties, available parties, who would have like, you're okay, because they thought he was number 89, he's kind of moderate, he doesn't like Donald Trump. Well, he's the guy who went to court and spent taxpayer money when our attorney general refused to stand up for him in order to strip away unemployment benefits and to stop that early. And evictions and stuff, he's not our ally, he's not a friend on so many things. And so the legislative majorities in the Senate and the House are in the hands of Democrats. And so we're talking about a lot of issues. Next year's an election year. So as we are trying to make change here, and council members like Phil Galando are leading the way on important issues, make sure you're asking candidates, make sure you get to know your candidates for the council, for county executive, for governor, and then yes, the legislature. But we've got to ask tough questions to know that we are thoughtful leaders who are what the values.
Yes, ma'am. What's your name? What's your name? Can you just say your name? You got, yeah, where are you from? That's okay. Nice to meet you. No, you check. Now you can ask your question.
And would encourage the industry to put the cell tower more on the main street rather than more suburban back street. Because the comfort amendment would help protect us from cell towers right next to our house. The zoning text amendment now in practice has actually no setback requirement.
Was 30 foot,
What?
30 feet. There's a conditional use process if you need.
They can get that way. And the Humper Amendment was restored, I think, back street and encourage the industry to put them on the main street for some benefit, for sanity, better for health, et cetera. Would you support Tom Humper's?
So we voted on that last Tuesday. It failed. So just
And how did you vote?
I did not support it.
And why not?
It was more related to how it would actually function in practice, and I don't think it was fleshed out well enough. I'm on the committee on the Fed committee, which considered this earlier. So we voted on all these issues, and we did set up we actually do have a more restrictive process than other neighboring jurisdictions. I know it's not what some would want, but there is we do have more process than others. So I just didn't think it was the right amendment. Right.
Telephone for any money, want to go wireless. Don't pay for all these private traffic, which is something better for us. But if we're just talking to abandon this network, which is very precious.
No, I understand the concern, and there's nothing in the ZTA that would stop them from pursuing this technology or deciding just whether, like they made the switch to fiber, and then the thing that preceded that. No, I don't think that, but I understand your concern, but I do, I really do. Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, the letter that was said that it's okay if the cell tower is 50 feet away. Well, that's the OCC, thank you. And so, you know, I'm not just because you guys are taking so much time. You said yourself, we don't have time to consider this. That's your choice. You know, there's a regular, it's a different example. Not letting the citizens express our opinion. But all we had a year and a half ago, well, things have changed. You know, you could change them. Lots of change. But you don't think you have to do it. You don't have no time to talk about it. It's all we bring to it.
Yeah. Well, I am here talking to you now, but I understand you.
I think you couldn't hear me.
No, I could. I said I'm talking to you now, though. But look, I understand, and as I said, I'm no fan of what is. Well, let me say it, Seamus, because they can't hear. So yeah, this is probably the issue. We've met with so many people on this issue. I know I met with some people in this room on this issue. Absolutely. And so I hope you feel heard. You know, when I came in, one of your colleagues said, "Thank you for raising our issues." So I think someone feels, you know, I have been the one. I have not been gun ho on this the whole way. I've tried to give voice. I paused it last time, you know, but I just think, again, this is the way it's heading, and I understand your concerns. And you know, I haven't made a final decision. I know what my office thinks I should do, but I haven't made a final decision on how I'm voting, to tell you the truth. But you know, I did vote to pass it out of committee and to give time for us to consider, see what happens with some of the lawsuits and some of the other amendments. But yeah, I don't want to repeat myself, but I hope you feel heard and I understand where you're coming from. Yes, I'm going to go in the back and then right here. Yes. And you live in Rockville. Yeah, great question. Thanks, Joel. Joe, it's Joe. I was about to say it's not Joel, it's Joe. Thanks for coming and thanks for the question. So haven't read the 300 pages yet. I've read the executive summary, but I will read the 300 pages. I promise you that. Seamus might have read the 300 pages, you know, because he handles the environment for me. So you know, we're, as you probably know, the first thing, you know, if you're talking about addressing the climate emergency and reducing our emissions and greening the grid, you got to deal with buildings, you got to deal with transportation, right? And so the first big chunk of what we're doing is this BEPS bill, the building performance standards, to address raising them, basically, for in layman's speak, so that we can have more efficiency and reduce our carbon footprint from buildings, which is a major emitter. So that's what we're doing first. I mentioned today I did the solar event. The kind of flip side of that coin is what can we accomplish with residential solar, right? There's no silver bullet with this, as you know. You're going to have to do multiple things at the same time. We're going to have to address our food waste and composting. We're in some serious conversations with MCPS about that. You know, one of the things I want to do, and I'm kind of trying to leverage, is I think every student every day should have every meal, right? We should do that and make that a right. And there's some jurisdictions that are doing that. We did it during COVID. it worked really well. And, you know, you shouldn't have these bank accounts and kids having to get the crappy sandwich, you know, things that we do now. So if we can do that and make that investment, let's also do that with something to address our food waste. So that's a set of issues that we're talking about. We're working on some legislation around electrifying the county more across the board. We do lead the nation. We have a whole bunch of MCPS electric buses. We purchased some for Ride-On. We're kind of leading the edge on that, on the transportation side. So I'll say the first step one is we're looking at the performance standards. And then I would say we're also looking at the same time. We did expand. Some people didn't like it as much as we expanded it. We did expand solar in the ag reserve. And actually I found out last week, we just got our first 2 megawatt project that was applied for. You know, some people said there were no projects going to happen, but the bill we passed, we just got one that has come forward. So hopefully more, and we can do more there while respecting what the ag reserve is for. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about. Happy to work with you on other ideas. As you know, it's a major, major issue. Yes, ma'am. Can you say your name? I know who you are, but for yes.
I'm asking you here today, before you pass the CPA, that's going to open up the floodgate of these powers to all that knowledge. It's going to address that system that is making people in those buildings be exposed to levels of our functions that we know have been proven to cause cancer and other health effects. Additionally, I'm asking you to the board president today to insist that there be a reflective and social justice study. Because we know, we've read in the packet, that tenants are not going to be notified. People that own homes will be told that they're not them. That's not fair. We need to stand up for justice for those people. We need to insist that they get noticed. We also know that people in the county who live in smaller homes are closer to the right place. Those towers are going to be closer to their homes. The trees that are going to be cut back or cut down to make those towers do what they're intended to do are going to harm those people. They're going to reduce their property value. People that don't have a lot of things. We need to stand up for racial equity and social justice to our residents. I thank you before for standing up and saying we need to wait for those lawsuits to be decided. I agree with you completely. I agree with Hans Remer when he said that the county needs to find out about this health effects. He was part of the county lawsuit that won that. I also know that more affluent residents can afford to hire a lawyer if they are told, and our renters aren't even going to know. If our more affluent residents are told there's a problem coming here, they're going to be able to afford to hire a lawyer. They might be a lawyer themselves to fight it. A low-income residents won't be able to do that. Please fight. Please do everything you can to fight for our residents. Fight for our neighbors and our friends and my students who are in those buildings with the towers on top. And fight for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone who's come. If you have to leave, I understand. Sign in, please. We're going to lock the door if you don't sign in. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Are we good on how much? We're still doing okay. Yeah, we can take a couple more. Anyone else have a question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
Really responded what you said. I think it's so important terms of, there is, we were part of, everyone appreciates that the racial equity and social justice bill was passed. It comes into effect September 21. I think a lot of people understand or think or concerned that there might be a rush to get this through because it will not happen by that time. You said that you care about the climate and climate action and support for everyone. If you cared, then you would maybe, as the other council members have each year, everyone needs to come together. So let's have a real climate analysis. How is this going to impact our use of energy in the county? And to do that, we have to, it takes study, it takes a little time. There's no reason to rush this through. So I would just say, if you try, let's try a little further. Let's see if you can vote. Take a vote at the end of September after we have actual analysis. If you care about climate, make it real. If you care about racial equity and social justice, we know that the Chaco Park region and affordable housing buildings, 22 apartment buildings in this county, the antennas are at a density like an antenna farm. That is not necessarily healthy for the people that they see the limits. So I encourage you to think about that as well as ADA access. I know people in my own area, my name is Susan Collin, I live in that state, my village of Martin Business has called for the council to change the date of voting to at least September. And people in my, right around the corner, someone who's written to your office about his ADA concern, that his unique health status and vulnerabilities will not be considered. No one, they don't care. Anyone will get these in front of their house. Not everyone wants it. Children have health status. There's no setbacks to school, no setbacks to playground. But I just want to make sure you know that and there's better.
I'm looking.
So we have to do what surrounding jurisdictions are doing. Well, surrounding jurisdictions in DC are protected. You can't put a certain number close to a tree or the roof. We don't have those protections. So there's like a race to the bottom. Gaithersburg has excellent protection. The reason is because the government there, the mayor, the council, they listened to the resident expertise and they came up with a plan together. What I see happening in the council is that you're kind of slamming the door on the resident expertise. You're trivialized, you're insulted, and you're not drawing to that. You have to make it strong. You really can have a good 5G policy. We already have 5G embedded in covering our county. And you said things even say that make you wonder, are you aware of that? Because there's certain people on the council say Rockville has it, so other places we have it.
Yeah, we have the commercial centers.
We look at the coverage maps, T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. It is diffused in the county. If anyone goes to antennasearch.com, you will see how many antennas power there is. There are 1,200 antennas and 33 towers within 3 miles of my home. Anyone going to antennasearch.com can see that. So I don't think, I just think it's really important to stand up for people. If you think you're try hard, and let's not make these bogus arguments that we've got to do what the surrounding jurisdictions are doing in terms of submissiveness to industry. Let's think about the race to the bottom. How about protecting people and that you want to go to a higher standard of doing what the most protective areas of the country are doing, which is having setbacks of at least 50, 500 feet, 1,000 feet. Verizon has said we do not need to have this. We can give you high bandwidth, 5G, 1,500 feet at least from the destination device. So why would you put it 30 feet? If you don't need it technically and there's no legal mandate, what's the reason? So, okay, I'm not sure what the reason is. I just hope that it will take some time to study and maybe go in September.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. You. Yes, I'm sorry.
My name is Saraya. It's great to be here with Blake. I'm learning a lot about food and a little bit of issues. But my question is about schools. just curious to know what you see some of the challenges are, specifically what other initiatives are through the county to continue or to work on those.
Yeah.
And also.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the question. And thanks for coming. So MCPS, great school system. We're the 15th largest in the country. We just had a briefing today. Because we're the 15th largest in the country, we have every issue and every positive thing you can think of in schools going on. We have several hundred unaccompanied minors that have come here from the surge at the border. We had a briefing today about how we're preparing for those young people who are going to enroll in our schools. And what are we going to do for the wraparound services? How are we going to deal with kids, the learning loss and the trauma that kids had over these last 18, 19 months? And so I think I mentioned before you got here, I convened with Councilmember Rice, the chair of the Education Committee, the Student Wellness Action Group, which is making recommendations about the supports that students need, social, emotional, mental health. So we're going to make some robust investments there in the fall for sure. So I think you're going to have more counselors, more psychologists, more student wellness centers, more nurses, more counselors. We're going to make some investments in all those areas. Unfortunately, our ratios are not where they need to be on all of those per student ratios. You mentioned the work on police-free schools. I talked about free lunch. The other thing we're working on is trying to address the after-school gaps that we see. Right? I grew up very low income in Quebec Terrace and Long Branch, University Boulevard, and Piney Branch, if you know where that is. And I didn't have an after-school program. And we had a study last year by our Office of Legislative Oversight that showed us we have 209 schools. The lowest income schools are the ones that are least likely to have the after-school programs, because a lot of parents pay for them. If you RT, think about all the programs that people pay for, and they locate where parents can pay. And there are some exceptions to that where we've made investments in Excel Beyond the Bell and linkages to learning. These are programs within the county, but we need to expand that to all these schools. It's unacceptable, particularly now, to say, well, we don't have the money. So I've been working on a proposal to make the investments we need to make to, within a defined period of a couple of years, to have all those after-school supports in place, right, at all the schools we need. So that's something that's going to need advocacy because it's going to cost money. And I'm going to have to come to the voters and say, I got to raise your property tax a cent to do it, right, or something like that. And I'm not saying that's the amount, but I think that's something we should make an investment. So I think after school is a big area where we're going to need to do more. There's an anti-racist system audit going on right now in the school system, because we have not only disparate arrests, but we have disparate discipline, right? How are one of the many pandemics we dealt with the last year? It was the health pandemic, it was the economic fallout, but it was also the racial justice pandemic, right? Of seeing George Floyd murdered and kids coming back to school dealing with that, Breonna Taylor, and again, others and others and others. So how are we going to address that in the school context for our students who have dealt with that? Address disparate discipline and suspensions. We had this horrible incident at East Silver Spring with this 5-year-old who was yelled at, screamed at by a police officer and handcuffed, that made international news. So we've got some challenges there, but the good thing is that the superintendent, the school board, they're doing this audit. We'll have the results, and then we're going to need to implement training and changes from that. So I would say those are kind of the main buckets. And then, we do have, the school system has done a really good job, I think, on providing summer school. We have 50,000 students in summer school, the most we've ever had right now. And that's being made available. Transportation's being made available for that. We're going to try to continue those services throughout the year, the extra services for students, once they assess them and see who's far behind. And we have money. The school system has over $200 million from the federal government outside of what we got to address learning loss and gaps. And so they're putting a plan together to address that. So I could talk about it all day, but those are some highlights. Happy to talk to you more. But I feel good that we have a sense of the problem and that we are getting to a point now where we're really meaningfully trying to address it. So I'm on the education committee. I'll likely be the chair of the education committee if I'm reelected. Please vote for me in next June. And so this will be something we work on for a long period of time. Oh yeah, you mean the boundaries? I think they should. I mean, they're mostly minor changes. I mean, just so you know, there was a boundary analysis done because you have some schools that I have one in my neighborhood where you have 80% of the students are in poverty, and then you have a school like a half a mile away where it's 20% of the kids are in poverty. And it's harder to teach in that 80% school. It just is, because the kids come and they have different issues they're dealing with and they need more services. And so the boundary change was just saying, how do we draw it a little to make that load, that education load, a little more equitable throughout the system? And they were minor changes. This is not busing from Bethesda to Burtonsville. That's not what this was about, despite what people said. And so I think